All right. Hi, guys. It is Tuesday. What does that mean? That means we're here together in English doing our live video, and it's a little bit different timing. I had a thing this morning, so we're trying the afternoon, and I'm in a different location. But you don't care. Here we are. You're here with me. As you know, my name's Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch. My law firm is an immigration law firm called Lincoln-Goldfinch Law, and I'm here with you on all the social media channels on Tuesdays in English to talk through the headlines of the week relating to immigration, help you make sense of everything, try to distill all of the information that you're getting, and answer your live questions about your immigration cases, doing something very similar in Spanish on Thursdays. So thanks for being here with me. Feel free to start putting your thoughts, questions, comments in the comment section, and I will be able to respond to them. Personal update from me. If you've been following along, you know that I have been running for office for State House of Representatives for District 50. Last Tuesday, a week ago today, was the primary election. I was not selected in the primary, but the voters made a good choice, and it is a positive outcome in lots of ways. Samantha Lopez Resendez is the selection that the voters made outright without a runoff for District 50. Sam is a really great candidate. I got to know her on the campaign trail, and my respect for her grew on the campaign trail as well, because one of the things you do on a campaign is you go to all these forums and you give your stump speech, and then you field questions from the audience, and you really get to know each other's motivations and positions on certain policy. And sometimes that can get really nuanced and in the weeds depending upon what event you are at. And so I got to watch Samantha respond to a lot of really detailed and nuanced questions about the district in the Austin Statesman, American Statesman interview, and the Chronicle interviews, and I was impressed by her policy knowledge. I think that she's really solid on women's reproductive justice. She herself is the daughter of immigrants. She has worked for Donna Howard, whom I have a lot of respect for many years, and so I am comfortable with the choice that the voters made, for whatever that is worth. Whether you care if I'm comfortable, I am. I do feel like this was a smart and solid choice. And although I would have done good work in the Capitol, I will also do good work out of the Capitol. So, not to fear, there is so much to be done. And now we get to really focus on and zero in on immigration issues, which, of course, is my bailiwick. So that is what we'll be focusing on. And we get to move away from campaign things and toward immigration things. So thank you for being with me on the journey. Thank you so much for all the people who were supportive of the campaign, who made donations, who shared the videos, who volunteered at events, who said nice things, who helped boost me up through what is a very wild personal process to go through a campaign as an individual and put yourself out there like that. And it's one of those things, like, how people say, like, oh, when you get sick, or, when you go through something really hard, you see who your friends are. Um, somebody's showing up and my dogs are barking. The same is also true when you campaign. You realize who your friends and supporters are. Not like in a weird way, like if you didn't support me, you're not my friend. Not like that, but like people show up for you when you do something big, and it is a wonderful thing to receive that support. And so if you were part of that cohort, just know that I appreciate you. Okay, let's move on to immigration news. We had like the best immigration news, something very celebratory. So celebratory, I had to pull over and do a little dance on the side of the road. And that was when Chrissy Noem got fired as DHS secretary. And she is just like so horrific and hateful. Like watching her performance in that committee hearing where she was trying to defend her actions, and watching the Republicans go after her for the way that people have been targeted and the way that Renee Good and Alex Petty were murdered, and her flippant nonchalance about the atrocities committed on her watch was enraging. Just watching her, like her little face and her freaking eyes just blinking as if these things don't require her to be prosecuted and jailed. Like watching that hearing was like not good for blood pressure. But then she got fired, and that was very good for blood pressure. It was very exciting. Like one of my friends, Robin, she posted like, uh, Christy Nome getting fired is one of those like canon events that we're always going to remember where we were when you heard about it. I was on the side of the road dancing. So anyway, that was good. And now she's been appointed as like special envoy to the Shield of the Americas, which is made up, of course, also weird. Also, if she's doing something in the Americas, that's probably not good because I don't think that she's going to have a very good reputation with the rest of the Americas. But now we, of course, know that Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, his first name is Mark Wayne, all one word. And somebody commented that he can't even protect the border in his own name, which I thought was very funny. But Mark Wayne Mullen is going to be confirmed next week, or he's going to a confirmation hearing. But there are a lot of concerns about him and his history. And so he potentially will not be confirmed, but we'll be watching that and then I'll be telling you guys about it. So number 2, an appeals court. This is another good news item. Trump attempted to revoke TPS protection for Haitians. A court blocked the revocation. That thwarted the going after the Haitian population in Springfield, which was planned. So luckily that community was protected against them going after. There's 350,000 Haitians living in the U.S. under TPS status. And so the Trump administration asked an appeals court to allow them to cancel TPS while the case is pending. It was like an emergency injunction. And here, what the appeals court said is that the government's failure to meet its burden of demonstrating irreparable harm alone justifies denying emergency relief that would upend the status quo and increase uncertainty while this appeal proceeds. So the case is still ongoing, but the appeals court said, no, we're not going to acquiesce. So that's good news for all of us and the Haitians. Another I'll touch again on the Cato Institute, the 30-year study studied from 1994 to 2003, the economic impact of immigrant populations at all levels, local level, state level, federal levels, that immigrants on every level, from a nonpartisan, deeply deep dive study, demonstrated that immigrants are positive for our economy. And that's something that we can be hammering on and hitting on as we hear anti-immigrant rhetoric. Bad news, green card holders are now ineligible for loans through the Small Business Association, through the SBA, because of the America First agenda. So that's a problem because so many immigrants are entrepreneurs, and historically green card holders have been eligible for SBA loans. The green card is a lifelong status. You're not required to get citizenship. So it's not as if, oh, these people are going to go away or lose their status. And this was carried out by Kelly Loeffler, who is the SBA administrator, who is a billionaire and a loyalist to Donald Trump. Next, there was an arrest of a journalist in Nashville. Her name is Stephanie Rodriguez Flores, and she works for Nashville Noticias and has been reporting on ICE activities. Last Wednesday, she was riding in a vehicle that was marked with the logo of her media outlet, and she was detained, which is an obvious violation and concern of First Amendment rights. And a court has ordered the release and a justification for her arrest. So that's good that the courts are on that. But anytime a journalist gets arrested, it is chilling and concerning. Next news item coming from Baltimore is that the mayor of Baltimore has signed an order limiting ICE. So it's an executive order that will protect the rights and the safety of the city's immigrant communities. And so this is great. Democratic-led cities across the country are bracing for potential surge in immigration enforcement. So they're preempting this. And there's been a long sort of battle between Baltimore and the Trump administration. So Baltimore is preparing. I will also tell you guys about a case that I'm just starting to look at, of a Venezuelan family that was detained. They were, just like the mariachi boys. Did you hear about the mariachi boys with this high school mariachi crew that they won the state competition in mariachi down in the valley? And they were even flown by a congresswoman up to Washington to perform, and they were detained. They have been released. So that case, I did a video about that, and I was saying, like, this is, high level case that we're all aware of. But the thing to note about these boys in this mariachi crew is that their case is just like so many others of people who are being detained. So they are asylum seekers. Their dad had been kidnapped by the cartels in Mexico and released, and so they fled to the border and they applied for entry using CBP-1, and they were admitted for asylum. They passed an interview, and they've been complying with and attending all their court hearings, just like all the other people who have been detained. Well, there's this other Venezuelan family. I'm sure I'll be telling you more about this case. They've come out in ABC News. They were detained at Dili, this mom and dad, and then their two little kids, asylum seekers, entered legally, complied with everything, got detained. They were picked up, and when they got released 2 months later, this is such a sad story, and you're going to have so many questions, and I don't have the answers for you yet. They went back to find that their apartment had been cleared out by their landlord, and their dog was gone. They still don't know the whereabouts of their dog, and they're worried that their dog ended up starving to death. And they had a bunch of cash in their apartment that was taken away, and now this family is homeless. So just horrific stuff when we take people off the streets. And I will say that, like, the dog thing, I mean, it's so upsetting, of course, but it also reminds me of a video I saw from a lawyer who has been representing people who, or I don't know how many people, but one is enough. Someone who was taken off the streets and their dog was left behind, and the collar on the dog had the phone number of the person who was detained, which obviously they weren't able to answer their phone because they were in detention. And so no one was able to get that dog to a relative. So it's another sort of safety planning tip for undocumented people. If you have pets, put your emergency contacts phone number on your pet's tag and on your microchip. So it's not just your contact information that will be used if your pet gets found. Okay, la morra de los gallos. This is in Spanish, and I'll repeat it in English. Abogada, explíqueme algo, por favor. Yo mandé a solicitar certificado policial, pero según lo pasaron para fiscalía para la visa U. Okay. Cuando una persona ha sido víctima de un delito y ha hecho un reporte a la policía, podemos obtener la certificación de la policía o de los fiscales. Si el caso fue pasado a la corte, la agencia que puede certificar el caso es la policía o los fiscales, pero a veces la policía dicen que no está en nuestras manos nada más y tiene que obtener la certificación de la fiscalía. Esa es la razón, pero normalmente lo certifiquen y no hay problema. The question is from a U visa applicant. U visa is for victims of crime. If they have sought law enforcement certification, which is part of the process from the police, but the police passed the cert request over to the prosecutor's office. Why did that happen? That's because the law enforcement agency that can certify a case is either the police or the FBI or some law enforcement agency, or a prosecutor. And oftentimes, and this happens in Austin, Travis County, like if APD hands the investigation over to the prosecutor's office to bring charges, then APD will no longer certify the case. And they'll say, you need to go get your certification from the prosecutor. But it's not a bad thing necessarily. In many ways, it's a good thing because the case is proceeding to prosecution. And usually the prosecutor's office will certify the case without a problem. So it doesn't mean anything wrong. It's probably a good thing. But what you need to do is make sure you're still cooperating with the prosecutor's office so that they certify your case. Another question in Spanish from Chaparra. Yo mandé a tramitar mi certificado policial, pero lo trasladaron para la fiscalía. La misma pregunta, Chaparra. Ya contesté esa pregunta. If a child is a U.S. citizen, what rights do they have even if their parents do not have legal status? Well, they have all the rights of a U.S. citizen to not be detained without probable cause, all the constitutional rights to not be deported. What can happen, though, is that if the parents are detained or deported, they may decide that they want their child to be with them. Not that it's up to them, not that they get to decide, but sometimes U.S. citizen children are detained with their parent, or if the parent is deported, they may decide to have the child go with them. And again, that doesn't always, it's not like parents just get to choose, I want my kid or don't detain my kid. It's up to whatever officer is in charge and what they're doing in that moment. So this is why it's really important to have a safety plan and have somebody who's going to be in charge of those kiddos, so that the kids don't end up in foster care. Okay, Alex, si yo entré como turista, mi pareja es ciudadano americano, ¿debo esperar 91 días para casarme o para meter la papelería o para ambas cosas? No hay una regla fija, pero normalmente es posible que van a sospechar fraude en el matrimonio si solicita el green card entre 90 días. Entonces, está bien si se casan, pero hay que poder explicar la razón por casarse muy pronto. Pero si hay una razón por cambiar su plan, no hay problema. Alex, debemos consultar y podemos hacer un plan. This question from Alex is a great question. It's about if I entered on a tourist visa and now I want to marry somebody who's a US citizen, do I need to wait 90 days to get married or do I need to wait 90 days to submit the paperwork? And the answer is it's not like there's some bright line rule that says you must apply after 90 days or you can't get married within 90 days. Basically, what they're talking about is your intention. When you entered on the tourist visa, did you actually intend to reside permanently in the United States? And that's called immigrant intent. And one of the clues that they have that you actually had immigrant intent when you entered on the visa is if you take action toward a green card within 90 days. It's kind of just like a general rule of thumb. So yes, you can get married within 90 days, especially if there's a reason, like my fiance proposed. I was going to go back, but we decided to live together. It's not like don't get married within 90 days or don't file within 90 days. It's be aware that if you do one or both within 90 days, it might raise the question of what were you thinking when you entered the country? And so the best thing to do is to have a strategy session with your lawyer in which we discuss the whole thing. When you met, where you met, what the plan was on the tourist visa, what you said when you entered, when you decided to get engaged, why you want to get married now. Like we talk through all of that and we'll help make a plan. And what I can say is I have never once in my experience had a client accused of marriage fraud because of an early wedding. So my anecdotal experience is that it's not a common thing, particularly if you have a reason. I did once defend someone who had been accused of it. And in this case, it was a man and wife, and they were living in Mexico, and they drove across the border with all their furniture and all their pets and everything. And the Border Patrol officer said, like, man, you can't move here. Obviously, you're moving, and you can't move here with all your stuff. And the husband was Mexican, and he said, no, I'm just getting my wife settled, and I'm going to go back to Mexico. So they only gave him a 2-week stay. Well, within 2 weeks, he applied for a green card. They went alone. They didn't have a lawyer. They were questioned about it, accused of marriage fraud, and then they hired me. And we ended up doing a fraud waiver and explained everything, and he ended up getting his green card. But it does occur. It's better to be aware of it beforehand and prepared for the line of questioning. Are there any immigration workshops or talks available for undocumented mothers to help protect themselves and their children? There's a lot of those. We are doing those at my firm weekly at least, with different organizations. We also have a webinar. Go to my website, abogadakate.com, and there's a lot of resources available that will help you with that. So go there and then reach out. If you have a group, let's say you're part of a PTA organization or a daycare or a group, and you want us to come and give information, that is a community service that we are providing at Lincoln-Goldfinch Law. So let us know if you need that help. If domestic violence comes from my U.S. citizen child toward me, their mother, can I apply for a visa? Yes. So VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, does allow for the parents who have been abused to get legal status. So some requirements are your child has to be a U.S. citizen and they have to be over the age of 21. So if your child is now over 21 and they have been abusive, and abusive doesn't have to be just physical abuse. It can be verbal abuse. It can be, yelling at you, threatening you, stealing things, a lot of bad behaviors can count. Then you as the parent can apply for VAWA. And I talk to a lot of parents who don't, obviously, you love your child, you don't want to harm your child, and you don't want to submit something to the government that says that my child did all these horrible things to me. But the thing is, it's confidential. Number one, your child's a U.S. citizen, so they can't be, gotten by immigration for what you put in your application. Number two, it's confidential, and it should not impact your child. So if it has occurred, then I think it's worth pursuit, and you can talk to us about it. I will also say there are not a lot, there are a handful of unscrupulous law firms that push child to parent VAWA applications because it's a way that a parent of a US citizen who can't otherwise get legal status can get status. Because if you enter the country without a visa, you can't adjust status through your child, but you can get VAWA through an abusive relationship. So there are some law firms, what do they call them? Arreglar sin salir. Law firms that will push VAWA on people who have US citizen children, but they can't get legal status. So this child to parent VAWA has gotten kind of a bad reputation because of this handful of unscrupulous lawyers. So you might go to some law firms that say like, oh, we don't do that, or that's fraud, stuff like that. So that's why there's like this weirdness around these cases. What I can tell you is we have done them. We have been successful, and we are very selective, and we're not going to do them unless we find that there's been actual cruelty in the relationship. Okay, what happens to U.S. citizen children when one of their parents is deported? It very much varies. Hopefully the other parent is here and that child resides with the other parent. Hopefully there's not a custody dispute between the parents, but somebody's going to have to file a court case. And generally, whichever court has the case first is the court of precedence. So like if mom is in Mexico and she files down there, Texas is not going to have another case on top. It's going to honor the order of what happens in Mexico. So there's some complications there. But this is another reason why having a safety plan and figuring this stuff out before a detention or a deportation occurs is really important, because what you don't want is to be figuring this out on the back end, or God forbid, one of these children went into state foster care and now you're trying to get them out of foster care. And there are cases in which the kids can't be easily gotten back from the state. That does occur. So planning on the front end is so important. The father of my child is a U.S. citizen, but we separated, and he does not help with child support. I am undocumented. Can I apply for a visa? Maybe. You could do a U visa if you're a victim of violence and you made a police report. You could do VAWA if you were married or common law married, and he's a U.S. citizen and you were subjected to cruelty. So all of those things would have to happen, and we would need to meet and talk about your case. And then you can definitely apply for child support from him with the Attorney General's office. If he's not paying child support, you can force him to pay child support. Okay, I think I've got 3 more questions here. If a woman divorces a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, does she lose her immigration process? Not necessarily. It depends on where you are in the divorce process. Have you already applied? Have you gotten legal status? Do you have a 2-year green card? Do you have a 10-year green card? Generally, there are a lot of ways to protect yourself once you have applied. VAWA is one way if there's cruelty in the relationship, if there have ever been any controlling behaviors or threats, if your spouse has ever threatened you with immigration, that is an indication that you could potentially qualify for VAWA. So the best thing you can do is consult with an immigration lawyer. If you are an immigrant in a marriage with a U.S. citizen, whether or not they've petitioned for you, and you're curious about how the divorce is going to impact your legal status, please consult with an immigration lawyer about what you can do. What immigration options are available for women who have experienced domestic violence or abuse? Generally, there are options. So if you are in an abusive relationship or you have escaped an abusive relationship, please consult with a lawyer. It is 100% confidential. That is part of our ethical rules. I will never share your information that you tell me with anyone. You can call a law firm comfortably and trust that your information is not going to be shared. If you have been the victim of violence, you could qualify for a U visa, a crime victims visa. In some cases, you could qualify for a trafficking visa if you were forced to work in the relationship. You could qualify for a Violence Against Women Act green card, which is if you were subjected to cruelty. There's lots of different avenues and protections for victims of violence, but you've got to take the first step and reach out to a law firm for a confidential consultation. Feel free to DM me and we will get you scheduled for a confidential consultation. Last question, and then I'll give you your tip of the week. What immigration options exist for undocumented mothers with U.S. citizen children? Not a whole lot. There's not a lot you can do based on your U.S. citizen child until your child turns 21 and can petition for you. If you have a minor child who's sick or has special needs or mental health issues, and you get placed in deportation proceedings, there is a defense to deportation. If you have been in the country for 10 years and you have good moral character and your kiddo would suffer if you get deported, you can seek the defense to deportation called cancellation of removal. But there's not an affirmative application that you can make just because your kid is a U.S. citizen. That's a common misconception with immigration. And with that, I'll wrap with the questions and give you your action item of the week. We're going to try and keep it positive. Let's do this. Let's thank your favorite immigrant entrepreneur for contributing to this economy. And would you go ahead and send me a DM of an immigrant-owned business that you love so that we can highlight them? We'll go visit. We'll take our cameras. We'll talk about them. We'll give them some love, and you can do the same. So that's your action tip of the week. Thanks for being here with me, guys. Nos vemos el jueves en español. See you soon. Bye.